Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hey, bookworms, welcome back to Bookcast. Ever feel like you run on a financial treadmill, you work hard, earn money, but it just seems to evaporate thanks to the magic of inflation? It's like watching your ice cream melt under the summer sun. Tragic. Well, today we're diving into The Bitcoin Standard by Saifedean Ammous, and let me tell you, this book might just have the financial life raft we've all been waiting for in under 10 minutes. We're going to explore how this little thing called Bitcoin could change the way we think about money, potentially solving those pesky inflation woes that keep us up at night.
What's intriguing about Ammous's vision is that he doesn't see Bitcoin replacing the dollar in your wallet for daily purchases. Instead, he proposes Bitcoin as a global reserve currency, a sort of digital gold standard underpinning the entire financial system.
Not buying coffee with Bitcoin, but having it as this invisible force stabilizing the value of our dollars, euros, and yen. That's a pretty radical idea.
Yeah.
But why even bother? What's so broken about our current system that we need a digital knight in shining armor to come and rescue us?
That's where Ammous's critique of fiat money comes in. He argues that currencies like the dollar, where the value is essentially determined by government decree, are inherently prone to inflation. Think of it like this. If you can just print more money whenever you need it, doesn't it make that money worth less over time?
Okay, that makes sense. It's like when you have a limited edition collectible. It's valuable because there are only a few, but if they suddenly print 1 million more, it's not so special anymore.
So is Ammous saying that our hard-earned money is slowly becoming less special thanks to inflation?
Exactly. And remember that feeling of watching your ice cream melt. That's your purchasing power eroding over time.
Yeah.
Ammous argues that this system encourages spending over saving, potentially leading to weaker economies in the long run.
Ouch, that hit a little too close to home. But wait, there's more. Ammous also makes this chilling connection between fiat money and, believe it or not, war.
The argument is that governments with the power to print unlimited money are more likely to engage in costly conflicts, essentially exhausting their citizens' resources in the process. In a way, runaway inflation could be funding conflicts. It sounds like a bit of a financial horror movie. But how does Bitcoin, this digital savior, solve this problem?
Ammous lays out the characteristics of good money. And Bitcoin, surprisingly, checks many of the boxes. Firstly, scalability. For a currency to be viable, it needs to be used for both tiny purchases and huge transactions across borders and across time. Bitcoin, at least in theory, can do that.
Hold on. Are you saying I could sell my house for Bitcoin and then use a tiny fraction of that same Bitcoin to buy, say, a pack of gum?
That's the idea. Bitcoin is divisible down to 8 decimal places, so it can handle transactions of any size.
Okay. That's pretty impressive. But what about inflation? Can Bitcoin really hold its value better than our current system? I mean, haven't we all seen those headlines about Bitcoin's price going up and down like a roller coaster?
You're right. Bitcoin has seen its share of volatility. However, this is where its hardness comes in. Unlike fiat currencies, Bitcoin has a limited and predetermined supply. Only 21 million Bitcoins will ever exist. In fact, over 90% of those have already been mined. Compare that to the endless supply of dollars, euros, and yen being printed every day.
Wow. So Bitcoin's like a limited edition collectible that gets even more exclusive over time. That does make it seem a lot more like a stable store of value, like digital gold. But let's be real, we're living in a digital world. Isn't a purely digital currency vulnerable to hacking and all sorts of shady stuff? I mean, how do we even know our Bitcoin is safe?
That's where the trustless system of Bitcoin comes in. Unlike traditional financial systems, Bitcoin doesn't rely on a central authority like a bank or government to verify transactions. Instead, it uses a decentralized network of computers, also known as blockchain technology.
Okay, so instead of trusting a single institution, we're trusting a whole network of computers. That sounds pretty complex. How does that even work?
It is complex, but think of it like a giant digital ledger that everyone has a copy of. Every Bitcoin transaction is recorded on this ledger, and the network of computers works together to verify those transactions, ensuring that no one can cheat the system. It's like having a million accountants constantly checking each other's work.
Like a financial Fort Knox, but instead of guards. It's math and computers keeping everything secure. That's pretty mind-blowing. But let's get back to the problem we started with. Inflation eating away at our savings. Even if this whole Bitcoin system is super secure and stable, it's not like we can use it to buy groceries or pay rent right now. You're right. While Bitcoin has come a long way, it's not quite ready to replace our daily spending habits. But that doesn't mean it's useless in the fight against inflation. Ammous suggests that Bitcoin, with its limited supply and decentralized nature, can act as a hedge against inflation, a safe haven for your wealth in these uncertain times. Okay, I'm starting to see the picture here. So while we're stuck using dollars and euros that are slowly losing their value, we can park some of our savings in Bitcoin, hoping it will hold its value better over time, sort of like a digital gold bar tucked away in a virtual vault.
That's a great way to put it. Think of it as diversifying your portfolio. Just like you wouldn't put all your eggs in one basket, spreading your savings across different assets, including Bitcoin, can help you weather the financial storms. Remember how we talked about fiat currencies encouraging spending over saving? Well, Bitcoin flips that on its head. Its limited supply encourages holding, which could lead to a more stable financial future for you.
It's a pretty compelling argument. It's like Bitcoin is encouraging us to be more financially responsible, and it's something my bank account definitely needs. But let's address the elephant in the room. We talked about Bitcoin's price volatility earlier. How can we trust it as a store of value if its price is going up and down like a yo-yo?
That's a valid concern. Ammous acknowledges this volatility, but argues that it's largely due to Bitcoin's relative youth. Think of it like the early days of the internet. Things were chaotic and unpredictable. But as more people adopted the technology and the infrastructure matured, things stabilized. Ammous believes the same will happen with Bitcoin.
So it's a bit of gamble, a bet on the future, but with the potential for big rewards. That sounds a lot like those buy land on the moon schemes you see online. What's the difference here?
The difference is the underlying technology and the growing network of developers, businesses, and individuals who believe in Bitcoin's potential. Remember the secure and decentralized system we talked about? That's what sets Bitcoin apart from speculative investments. Ammous is betting on the strength of this technology, not just hype.
Okay, so we're not talking about a get-rich-quick scheme, but a long-term bet on a revolutionary technology. But let's say Ammous is right, and Bitcoin does become this global reserve currency. What would that world look like? Would we all be paying for our pizza with digital coins?
Wow. Ammous doesn't paint a picture of a futuristic Bitcoin utopia. But he does argue that a Bitcoin standard could lead to more stable economies, less government overreach, and a greater emphasis on individual freedom and responsibility.
Wait, hold on. Less government overreach. How does Bitcoin achieve that?
It goes back to the decentralized nature of the system. Since Bitcoin isn't controlled by any single entity, governments would have less power to manipulate it, inflate it, or use it to fund wars or excessive spending.
So it's like taking power away from the big guys and putting it back into the hands of the people. It's a bit like a financial revolution, isn't it?
You could say that. It's a radical shift in how we think about money and power, of course. There are critics who argue that this could lead to instability and chaos. It's a complex issue with strong arguments on both sides, but one thing's for sure. Ammous's vision is thought-provoking, to say the least.
All this talk about global reserve currencies and financial revolutions is making my head spin. It's fascinating stuff. But I'm sure some of our viewers are thinking, okay, this is all well and good, but what does it mean for me right now? Should I be converting all my savings to Bitcoin?
That's the million-dollar question, and one that we'll tackle in the final part of our deep dive. Get ready for some actionable takeaways that you can apply to your own financial journey.
All right, let's get down to brass tacks. We've explored the fascinating world of Bitcoin, its potential to revolutionize finance, and maybe even save us from the evils of inflation. But the question on everyone's mind is, what do we do with this information?
Well, remember that feeling of financial dread we talked about at the beginning, that feeling that your hard-earned money is constantly losing value. Ammous doesn't suggest throwing all your dollars into Bitcoin and living off crypto lattes, but he does offer some practical steps you can take right now.
Okay, so maybe not a Bitcoin shopping spree just yet, but what kind of actions are we talking about? Should we all become day traders, staring at charts and trying to predict the next Bitcoin boom?
Not necessarily. Ammous emphasizes the importance of education and understanding the fundamentals of Bitcoin before making any financial decisions. Remember those key characteristics we discussed? Scarcity, divisibility, security. These are the foundations of Bitcoin's value proposition.
So, step one is to do our homework and understand what we're dealing with.
Got it.
But once we've got a grasp on the basics, what's next? Should we be rushing to buy a whole Bitcoin? Let's be honest, those things aren't exactly cheap.
That's where the concept of Satoshis comes in. Remember how we talked about Bitcoin being divisible? Well, a Satoshi is the smallest unit of Bitcoin, like a penny to the dollar. You don't need to buy a whole Bitcoin to get started.
So we can dip our toes in the Bitcoin pool without breaking the bank. That's reassuring. But where do we even BUI these Satoshis? Do we need to find some shady back alley Bitcoin dealer?
Not at all. There are plenty of reputable exchanges and platforms where you can buy, sell, and store Bitcoin. Ammous actually dedicates a portion of the book to walking you through the process, step by step.
That's super helpful. It's like having a Bitcoin guide right in your pocket.
Oh.
But what about security? We talked about Bitcoin's decentralized system, but how do we make sure our own little stash of Satoshis is safe?
That's where the concept of self-custody comes in. Ammous strongly advocates for learning how to manage your own Bitcoin wallet, a digital vault where you store your Bitcoin keys.
Wait a minute. My own Bitcoin wallet?
Yeah.
So I'm responsible for my own Bitcoin security. No safety net if something goes wrong. That sounds a bit daunting.
It is a responsibility, but it also gives you more control over your assets. Remember how we talked about the potential downsides of fiat currencies, like government manipulation and inflation? With Bitcoin, you're in the driver's seat.
I see what you mean. It's like the financial equivalent of learning to ride a bike. It might be scary at first, but once you master it, you have freedom and independence. But let's be realistic. Not everyone is going to become a Bitcoin expert overnight. Is there a middle ground for those of us who aren't ready to manage our own digital Fort Knox?
Absolutely. There are more user-friendly platforms emerging that simplify the process of buying, selling, and storing Bitcoin. It's all about finding the level of involvement that suits your knowledge and comfort level. The key is to start small, learn as you go, and remember that knowledge is power.
This deep dive has been quite the journey. We've gone from financial anxiety to exploring a potential solution, all thanks to the Bitcoin standard. We've learned about the flaws of our current system, the revolutionary potential of Bitcoin, and even got some practical tips on how to get started. It's been a whirlwind of information.
And that's the beauty of it. The Bitcoin standard doesn't just present information, it sparks a conversation, challenges us to rethink the way we view money and finance. Whether you become a Bitcoin enthusiast or not, the insights Ammous offers are invaluable in navigating the complexities of the financial world.
It's definitely a book that will leave you thinking long after you finish reading it. So if you're ready to dive deeper into this fascinating world, we highly recommend checking out the Bitcoin Standard yourself. You can find links to the book in the description below.
And don't forget to let us know your thoughts. Do you see Bitcoin as a revolutionary force, a hedge against inflation, or just another passing fad? We want to hear from you.
Hit that like button if you found this deep dive insightful. Share it with your friends who might be looking for some financial enlightenment. And don't forget to subscribe to Bookcast for more mind-expanding explorations of impactful books.
Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring the world of ideas.